Thank you, councillors. Is that on?
It's on.
It's on.
It's not going green though.
Not close enough. Thank you, councillors. We, the Greater Shepparton City Council, begin today's meeting by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land which now comprises Greater Shepparton. We pay respect to their tribal elders, we celebrate their continuing culture, and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. Excuse me. Please note that this council meeting is being streamed live and recorded in accordance with the council's live streaming and recording of council meetings policy. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the public gallery, it is assumed your consent is given in the event that your image is broadcast. More information on this policy, please access the Greater Shepparton City Council's website. Any apologies, councillors? None, thank you. Do we have any declarations of conflicts of interest?
Yes, Mr Mayor, in respect of item 9.4, I will have a conflict of interest there in that I have an involvement with a property impacted by the amendment. Thank
you, Councillor Hazelman. That's been noted. Now, councillors, we have an item on page 1, the confirmation of our previous meeting's minutes. Do I have a councillor wishing to move the recommendation as the motion?
Yes, I move.
Now, Councillor Horace-Vardy, you were at the last meeting, I presume. Yes, that's very good. Do I have a seconder, please? Mr. Councillor Giovanetti. Councillor Horace-Vardy, do you wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Giovanetti, any councillor wishing to speak against this motion? For, all in favour? Against, motion carried. Now, councillors, item 6.1. We have a recommendation on page 2. The recommendation is that the council adopt the revised curbside landfill waste recycling and organics collection policy 91.POL 1. Do I have a councillor wishing to move that? Councillor Abdullah. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Summer. Councillor Abdullah, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Policy that was adopted on October 2015 had limitations, and it was not comprehensive. In particular, it lacked the incentive for residents to be vigilant about reducing contamination from their recycling and organics waste prior to bin collection. Now, this policy is aligned with Goulburn Valley Waste and Resource Recovery Plan, as well as statewide objective to maximize landfill diversions and maximize recycling and resource recovery. Revised policy addresses some issues and questions regarding organic and food waste collection. Council aims to achieve, it is my understanding that Council aims to achieve a 3% organics contamination rate. This is generally achieved within 3 to 5 years of service rollout. However, our neighbouring council, some of them have achieved this target within 2 years. So some hard work needs to be done there. Education, of course, plays an important role in meeting these targets. So the revised policy is outlining some sanctions. Example, service termination for regular offenders. Such sanctions have seen successful results in neighbouring councils, such as Morashire, where the repeat offenders collection service is terminated. Now, just want to be very, I want to state that I would want council to be very careful about this and make sure that wherever there is a case of repeat offenders and the termination is, there is a follow-up action as well, because we do not want these residents to start dumping somewhere else in undesignated areas. So it's important for council to follow up on those termination cases. I understand that revised policy is also sensitive to the needs of elderly residents who might need help in collection of their bins from the site instead of curbside. This service is, however, available on request only and on a case-to-case basis. Overall, I'm very satisfied with the revised policy.
Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Summer?
A lot of information was given there by Councillor Abdullah, so that's terrific. I'll keep mine fairly short. First of all, I'd like to thank the public for their cooperation in implementing a new bin service, which was the organic bin. It was a little divisive at the start, but we have managed to reduce quite a lot of tonnage from landfill and take it to Western composting so that the food can be used over again as a fertiliser. Now, it's unfortunate that we do have to tighten this policy, but because some people are doing the wrong thing, we do actually have to start from the bottom up and make sure that we're addressing and enforcing contamination rates. Risk management does state that it's an upstream level of risk, which means that the providers who actually take the food waste are responsible for managing that risk, which is a little bit unrealistic because they can't sort through every single bin. So they're a private enterprise and we should be supporting them because Western Composting, which is the name of our provider, is a best practice facility. It's the envy of all of Victoria. We're very lucky to have that here and we should take enormous pride. It was innovative when it was first developed and we want to support them any way possible. Just a small amount of contamination can really ruin a truckload of organics, and yeah, just because a couple of people are doing the wrong thing, we'll need to police that further.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Any councillor wishing to speak against this motion? Any other councillor wishing to speak for the motion? That said, Councillor Abdullah, any closing comments? All in favour of the motion? Against? Motion carried. Item 6.2, part road closure and sale of laneway abutting Byers Street. There's a recommendation, councillors. It's on page 6. Do I have a councillor wishing to move that as the motion? Councillor Asvari?
Move that motion on page 6.
Thank you. A seconder, please.
Yeah, I'll second it, but with the move of the motion's agreement, I would change the wording slightly in the very last paragraph where it says submissions to objections.
Last paragraph.
And if you'll indulge me, I'll explain why.
Exactly where, Councillor Hazelman? Item 4, is it?
Yep. The very last paragraph.
Yes.
Where it says if no submissions are received.
Yes.
And the reason I'm saying it should be objections, we may get a submission that's actually in favour.
Right. You want the word submissions?
If the mover
is happy
to objections,
to be replaced with the word objections. You happy with that, Councillor Asvari?
Absolutely.
So the motion will read as printed on page 6 with the word submissions removed, replaced by the word objection. Good. That being said, you're seconding the motion, Councillor Hazelman. Councillor Asvari.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. This is another example where we occasionally get a section of road which is no longer of use, but it is actually being used by a business in circumstances and they just want to formalise it. And this is a procedure whereby we put it out to public notice. The Chief Executive Officer, Mr Herriot, is authorised to undertake the various procedures that go with it. Other than that, the portion of laneway is at the end of the laneway which abuts two businesses.
yes, okay.
And is used for one of those businesses for the storage of materials. It's fairly straightforward.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hazelman.
No, to me.
No. Any councillor wishing to speak against this motion? Councillors wishing to speak for the motion? That's it. Councillor Asvari, any closing comments?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. All in favour of the motion? Against? Motion carried. Item 6.3, councillors, on page 9 of our agendas. We have a recommendation that the council adopt the Road Management Plan version 5. Do I have a councillor wishing to move this recommendation as a motion? Councillor Patterson. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Summer. Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, this is required under the Local Government Act for us. Every incoming council must review this policy, and that's what we've done. It was out for public consultation. We've received no input at all, which means it's really good. our roads are perfect, which we all knew before we put it out for consultation. So I propose that we pass it and move on with our brilliant roadworks.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Summer?
Just to reiterate, we didn't get any submissions for this, which was, I believe, a little bit unusual considering roads are something that people do love to complain about. There's an opportunity to have input and we got nothing. So we can only fix as much as we know about, and obviously the way that we're doing things, the regime must be working. So happy to adopt.
Good, thank you. Any councillor wishing to speak against this motion? Any comments for the motion? Councillor Abdullah.
What I can see, the road management plan was updated to, number one, clarify defect descriptions of roads, and also the measurements and parameters or specifications that now have reduced in measurement. And a third aspect that stood out was the response time, which so the response times have mainly been reduced. For example, for this defect, guide posts missing or damaged at a critical location, making them substantially.
Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. Any councillor wishing to speak against? For? That being said, Councillor Patterson, any closing comments?
Thank you.
All in favour of the motion? Against? Motion carried. Page 13, councillors, item 6.4, contract number 1760, provision of drainage maintenance services. Recommendation as printed, and I shall read it for the benefit of our live streaming viewers. That the Council accept the tender submitted by Tox Free for contract number 1760, supply provision of drainage maintenance services for the schedule of rates, price estimate of $315,576 over a 3-year period, or $420,767 with a 1-year extension including GST. Authorises Chief Executive Officer to award the initial contract for a term of 3 years with the optional contract extension of 1 year, and authorise the Chief Executive Officer to sign and seal the contract documents. Do I have a councillor wishing to move that recommendation as a motion? Councillor O'Keefe. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Orisvari. Councillor O'Keefe.
Basically, the Greater Shepparton City Council wanting to provide value for money services with best practice and internal systems with our process. We've had sort of casual arrangements in the past. We're now wanting a more permanent contractor. So I'm thinking that's a good move to have someone readily available, as listed for the items listed on page 14. Situation.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor Orisvari.
Well, thanks, Mr Mayor. I just note that there are 8 people in for the 8 companies in for it, and there must be some really good money in waste.
Yes, thank you. Any councillor wishing to speak against this motion? Councillors wishing to speak for the motion? Councillor O'Keefe, any closing comments? That's being said, all in favour of the motion? Against? The motion carried. Item 7.1, councillors, section 86, committees of management, membership appointments, page 17. Do we have a councillor wishing to move the motion as printed? Councillor Giovanetti. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Giovanetti.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation on page 17, which states that the Council, having considered the application received for appointment to the Congupna Recreation Reserve and Community Centre Committee of Management, appoint the following applicant to the existing committee, term commencing on the 21st of June 2017 and concluding on the 18th of September 2018, that being Jeff Jacobson. And 2, resolve that all members who are not councillors or nominated officers of the Congupna Recreation Reserve and Community Centre Committee of Management continue to be exempt from the requirement to complete interest returns in exercise of power granted to Council under Section 81(2)A of the Local Government Act. It's great, Mr Mayor, that we have a very effective group of Section 86 committees, people who are prepared to volunteer their time to assist their local community in the various areas that the Section 86 committees operate. Sorry, Section 81. And I think that they're all to be commended for a fantastic job.
You, Councillor Patterson.
Long and hard we've talked about the important role volunteers play in our community, and this is just another example.
You, any councillor wishing to speak against this motion? Councillors wishing to speak for the motion? Councillor Giovanetti, any closing comments?
No, Mr Mayor, it's straightforward.
Thank you. All in favour? Against? Motion carried. Item 7.2, councillors. Recommendation on page 20. Do I have a councillor wishing to move that recommendation?
Mayor, I'll move the recommendation that Council adopt the revised Shepparton Art Museum Collection Development Policy 02.POL1.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor Summer. Councillor Hazelman.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. As the report indicates, this development policy adopted in 2011 was last reviewed in October of 2013, so it was very appropriate that it is to be reviewed on a regular basis, and the minor changes that have been made to the document were circulated to the SAM Advisory Committee before their most recent meeting, and it's important that the development policy is maintained and is up to date because it provides the parameters and provides advice to the SAM Advisory Committee so that they can make informed decisions around the collection in terms of acquisitions and further development of the collection.
Good, thank you, councillor. Councillor Summer.
Oh, no, that's all been said.
Good. Any councillor wishing to speak against this motion? Motion. Councillor Hazelman, back to you.
No, Mr Mayor.
All good. All in favour, councillors? Against? Motion carried. Next item is item 7.3, councillors, on page 23 in regard to the Murchison Community Plan, very important motion, plan review for 2017. Do I have a councillor wishing to move that recommendation as a motion? Councillor Abdullah. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Asvari. Got a tag team over there.
No.
There you go.
You lead.
Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Abdullah, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would like to move a motion that the council endorse the updated Murchison Community Plan 2017, and number 2, acknowledge the valuable contribution Murchison residents have made to the update of their community plan. Now, this plan was originally developed in the year 2011. I would like to highlight that the community's involvement and engagement in keeping this plan current is admirable. The plan identifies actions for 2017, such as development of a gym, safe crossing points, pub to post office, and a playground at Recreation Reserve. So it will be great to see implementation of some of these identified actions for coming years. What is required is the continued level of engagement and interest in achieving these plans through council grants or other funding arrangements. Sometimes the initial enthusiasm and interest fades away over a period of time when it comes to such community plans. However, Murchison's review of the plan in 6th year shows community's commitment to the plan, so it is commendable.
Good, thank you, councillor. Councillor Asvari.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, look, I remember when the lady who came in and spoke to us, Jenny was her first name, and I apologise because I didn't get her second name. She came and spoke to us about the Murchison Community Plan. She identified and detailed some strategic directions, was indicated to us that she was very enthusiastic, as the community was, in relation to the rail trail, and it was my understanding that Campaspe had some money towards that, and she expressed the view that it actually ideally should start from Murchison East, which I didn't think was a bad idea. She also lamented the loss of the Murchison Tomato Fest. as it didn't get off the ground, and many people, in her view, expressed a sense of disappointment down in Murchison in regards to that. And conversely, she spoke of a source of local pride in relation to Dacia's Mill, in relation to how popular that was. She talked about how, on her wish list, they would love to have a new football netball club room at Murchison because that is in a sad state of repair. She further indicated that she was very happy with the fact that there's 260 metres of new footpath in the Murchison area as well. And all in all, I found it a very informative and educative briefing.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Orizvari. Councillors wishing to speak against this motion? For the motion? Councillor Giovanetti.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I can fully endorse the comments made by Councillors Abdullah and Orizvari. Murchison is a very proactive community, obviously identified by the speaker that came and met with us a few weeks ago. I think it's very opportune that we've just recently passed the contract for the drainage maintenance, because that's one of the issues that has been brought up to me on several occasions from residents in the Murchison area. And I fully concur that the football, netball club rooms need some significant work. And I'd like to see Council support that community in their endeavours to improve those facilities. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Giovanetti. Any councillor wishing to speak against the motion? For Councillor Summer.
Just to mention how important small towns are to this council. We do these community plans with an enormous amount of engagement with the community. We get barbecues for consultation, we send out surveys, we make sure we've tried to consult with as many people as possible in order to empower the residents to forge their own path. Each small town in Greater Shepparton is quite unique, and this is a way for their identities to be solidified again in their own way. It's been very successful. We have a number of these, and it's very bottom up. So most of the time you see governments and they're telling communities what to do. This is flipped it on its head. It's completely opposite, and the communities are telling us. So we value our small towns, and that is one example of how we do it.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Any councillor wishing to speak against? For Councillor Patterson.
Yes, this is. I think Murchison was one of the first one or two towns to have their community plan steering committee up and running. It just seems like yesterday. It has worked so well, especially in Murchison. A lot of the reason these were set up is a lot of smaller towns have people that tend to dominate. You don't necessarily hear what the actual town wants. And I think this summarises it perfectly when you read out a part of this plan that says the Community Plan Steering Committee guided the consultation process from the beginning to the end. So they did themselves. And one of their key priorities was how can we hear from every voice in Murchison? And that is the secret to community plans. They've done it extremely well. They've come up with a list of what they want, not what a couple of people thought Murchison should have. And it's worked perfectly down there, and I congratulate them for all working together. And I think it is, you know, it's been used probably a couple of times before, but how can we hear every voice in Murchison is a terrific concept to have to find out what the actual town wants, not what we tell them they should have.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Any other councillor wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion? That being said, Councillor Abdullah, any closing comments? All in favour? Against? Motion carried. Now, councillors, item 7. No. 8.1, councillors. How could I miss this one? 2017-2018 budget, a very important document, councillors. That's printed on numerous pages, starting at page 29, I think, of our agendas, and concluding on page 32. Councillors, do I have a councillor wishing to move the budget as printed on all those pages? As Councillor Giovanetti. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Giovanetti, do you wish to speak to this very important motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I won't read out the 3 pages of the recommendation because I'm sure the gallery and those watching it at home tonight have copies of the agenda in front of them. This has been a significant exercise by our staff to implement this year's budget. We've managed to stay within the 2% rate capping that government has forced upon us. And when you consider that we have a budget in excess of $73 million, that's no mean feat considering the number of people we employ as well as the number of services we provide. We've met with the community in relation to submissions that were received, and a number of those submissions that we heard a couple of weeks ago have now been included with this budget, which we're happy to endorse those applications, and I'd just like to congratulate all those who did submit their thoughts on the budget to us.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Giovanetti. Councillor Patterson?
Yeah, I'd just like to speak quickly on a couple of the key points as far as I'm concerned. One is the borrowing of $6 billion this financial year for Cosgrove Landfill 3. Borrowings are never nice. This is a intergenerational project which will be spread over many, many years of this council's life to come. So I fully endorse the loan for that. $6 million, a lot of money, but we have to have that facility available for us, and that will cover council's waste for many, many years to come. So it's very important. The renewals, which is probably every councillor's pet side of the budget because we get to spend money on things. This year there's $39.38 million on capital works. 25.36 million of that will be on renewables. Now, renewables aren't a sexy thing as far as the councillor goes because basically they go on things we've already got to replace them and to repair them and have them up and running. It's very easy not to concentrate on renewals and let our roads slip back. You know, we have a responsibility as councillors to make sure that doesn't happen. And while we'd also like to see $39.38 million built on new infrastructure, etc., which our ratepayers can see and think it's terrific, we have the responsibility to make sure that that doesn't happen, that we continue to keep what we have in good condition. So there's $7.95 million on new works, which is not a lot of money out of our total budget, but it'll be great to get some of those projects up. And yeah, fully endorse the whole budget.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Any councillor wishing to speak against this motion? Any councillor wishing to speak for the motion? Councillor Summer first.
I think it's a really great budget, and as people have said, there is the challenge of rate capping and the grant indexation that we've had previously, and still managed to get a surplus. So that's terrific, and we've done that. We've had $1 million decrease in capital works, but pleasingly, we've also decreased our fees and charges in the waste department, which is more in line with rate capping, even though the waste department wasn't necessarily under that umbrella. And also pleasingly, we have $1 million set aside for stage 2 of the CBD redevelopment, which is the Maud Street Plaza and bus stop. That stage 2 has actually been broken up into 2 spaces. So the plaza and bus stop will come first, and then we'll work on the road. And there's also things in there for the solar tender, which could really put us on the map of renewable energy. It's impossible to agree with everything in the budget, and I wouldn't be true to myself if I said I did. It's a very large document, but councillors have worked really hard to negotiate, cooperate and try to get these outcomes. Every year I talk about the municipal charge and not being incredibly happy with the purpose of the municipal charge. Here on page 31, 4.1, it does say the purpose of the municipal charge is to cover some of the administrative costs of council. And I do understand that that is the definition under the Act, but I find that that's misleading because we don't actually collect any extra revenue. The intention is to redistribute that money. So $262 is taken from every rateable property in the municipality, and then it's staggered down from the top from people who pay the most, so that we have a more even median. so that the people at the top are actually paying less because the people everywhere are contributing to their rates. The other thing I'm not completely comfortable with, but I understand there is a consensus and they have complete faith that this is going to work, but that's the SAM line item. We still don't have the philanthropy money that we had in our plan. We are going to begin building SAM without the philanthropy money, and to me that's almost putting the cart before the horse, and it's risky because we don't know if the beginning of the build is going to create enough confidence for people to donate, but there is a consensus that that will be the case, and once we begin, the money will flow with it. So other than those things, yes, I'm happy to endorse the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Any councillor wishing to speak against? Any other councillors wishing to speak for? Councillor Sutton.
I'd like to thank the staff for their hard work in putting this budget together. I think it's been a good budget and it's been a positive time with the council and discussion around what we're putting into it. And also I'd like to thank those who took time to put in their submissions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Any other councillor wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion, Councillor Abdullah.
Thanks to the council staff for their professionalism and in all the structured processes and the answering of the queries that happened throughout the process. Then the second thing that I want to highlight is about the submissions. So thanks for all the community members who provided their feedback and submissions were made. So also want to note that that some changes were incorporated into the budget post this consultation process. So obviously, changes incorporated shows that community's involvement is very much there, and also that this council is listening because some amendments were made. As you can see on page 121, it just highlights some of the changes that were done after the consultation process. So we have now 20K contribution to Shepparton Food Share. We've got additional 20K for Shep Show Me, and 10K towards the Tura Museum extension detailed design stage has been allocated. So I think that's a wonderful outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. Any other councillors wishing to speak for the motion? Councillor Hazelman.
I would be very, very brief. I think other councillors have talked about the constraints imposed by the state government of the 2% increase in revenue, which flows on from 2.5% last year. So it doesn't take Einstein to work out what the direction this is heading in, that in future years this is going to get tougher and tougher. And at this stage, with the mooted proposal to annual valuations, what that's going to impact in terms of our revenues is something that we'll have to work through into the future. And of course, the budget itself has got a number of drivers to it, and we'll talk about one in a few moments, which is the rating strategy, which is another item in here. It's rather interesting that we've got a number of submissions in respect to the budget, but in respect to the rating strategy, which was released for public comment at the same time, no submissions were received. Yet everybody's got a view about rating and differentials and all of that, but no one took the opportunity to inform the process. And hopefully that's not a circumstance that will continue into the future, that we would like to see a lot of robust debate about how our rating strategy is applied. Also, comment was made in relation to the borrowings for Cosgrove, and I too would support that in terms of it's a major infrastructure project. It's got an income stream capacity to both service and repay that debt, and that's the type of borrowing that I think is beneficial to the council's business.
Good, thank you, Councillor Hazelman. Any other councillors wishing to speak for or against the motion? Councillor O'Keefe. Yes.
I think Councillor Abdul touched on it as new councillors. This is a very, very in-depth process, particularly for us new ones. And I think, with the support that has been given to us, I'd like to thank, as has been pointed out, CEO Peter Harriott, obviously the support staff, the officers. It's been a very complex interesting process for me. I'm sure I speak on behalf of all councillors. This is the community's budget. We want to do what's best for them, absolutely 100% of the time. So I think a lot of the discussion that has happened, you know, it hasn't just been a quick fix. It's been a long, months and months process, to and froing, and really discussing, you know, the areas that we felt needed to go into the budget. So I've really enjoyed it. I've found it such an eye-opening experience in my community, and I think, you know, us councillors, this is our job. It's what we're here for, you know, to really spend the money wisely.
Good, thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Any other councillor wishing to speak to or against? Well, that's good. No one's spoken against, so I will speak for the motion. I just want to wrap this up. I think every other councillor has pretty much said what I intended to say, but I'll just add my own.
So you'll be silent then?
No, I won't be silent. I do like to offer my thanks to the CEO and all the staff who've contributed to the makeup of this budget. It's been quite hectic for 3 or 4 months now, putting this together. There's been a lot of engagement with the community, which has been really great. Even as late as 2 or 3 days ago, we were still making minor adjustments to this budget. As councillors, it's our responsibility to handle $120 million of expenditure, so we don't take this on lightly at all. As Councillor Summer alluded to, it's not perfect in everyone's mind, but nothing can be perfect, but we think it's responsible. As Councillor Patterson alluded to with the borrowings, they are responsible borrowings. We're still well under the state average in borrowing. That's where we mean to keep it. Our borrowings aren't for operational issues, they're for project-orientated expenditure, which is really great. So once again, thanks to all the community for engaging, and also I really offer my thanks to the staff and the CEO for putting together such a responsible and hopefully fruitful budget. Now, of course, not everyone got what they wanted this year, so a lot of items have been identified and will certainly be on the minds of all councillors and the organisation next year for next year's budget. So congratulations to all, and I fully support. Yes, Mr Harriott.
May I just add a few words, please?
You may indeed.
Look, this is a very big budget, $120 million plus $40 million in capital. So for a new council to come together over a very short period of time to consider such a large budget, it is a major task. So I say well done to this new council getting together and operating as a strong team and you know, really attacking a serious task, which is a large budget. So new and old councillors coming together as a new team, great effort. We've, as everyone has indicated, managed to deliver an operating surplus, fully fund our renewals and borrow responsibly. 3 key underlying financial factors that we should maintain through for many years coming. Now they're significant achievements with 2% rate capping and all the external environmental factors that we have impacting on our budget. So that's a very good achievement. We did receive a number of submissions, and it's pleasing to see that we've accommodated most of them, or the councillors have come together and you've accommodated most of the submissions that have been placed before us. So that should send a message, that should encourage people to make submissions and to participate in our budget process, because we have listened and we do try, if not totally meet the request, in part meet the request or provide a response that gives some indication as to when further down the track we may be able to accommodate those responses. So that's been pleasing as part of this budget as well. And if I may just thank the staff, the directors and all staff that put in and assisted with the budget this year. Thank you very much, particularly the finance staff through Chris and Matt and Magenta and various key financial people that pull this together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Harriott. Councillors, all in favour of the motion? Against? Motion carried. (8.2) Councillors, item 8.2 on page 38, the contract number 1780, provision of banking and bill payment services. Do I have a councillor wishing to move that? Councillor Giovanetti. Seconder, Councillor Osvari. Councillor Giovanetti.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 38. The Council accept the tender submitted by the Commonwealth Bank of Australia for contract number 1780, provision of banking and bill payment services. for the schedule of rates, price estimate of $777,253.46. We authorise the Chief Executive Officer to award the initial contract term of 5 years and authority to exercise the optional extension periods of 2 by 1 year extensions subject to contract requirements, and also authorise the Chief Executive Officer to sign and seal contract documents. Mr Mayor, although this tender is not the lowest...
Excuse me, Councillor Giovanni, do I have a seconder? I think we've got that. Yes, we have. Continue, you're right.
Councillor Osvari had seconded the motion, it seemed. Although this tender was not the lowest tender that we received, the Commonwealth Bank offer a far wider range of services than what the other tenderers were able to provide, which is something that, moving forward as a progressive council, I think that we need to seriously look at. One of the other points of interest is that we had an approved budget of $1.223 million for this particular project. The tender came in at $777,000, which is an approximate budget variance of about $500,000, which I think is an exceptionally good effort.
Thank you, Councillor Giovanetti. Councillor Osvari.
Yes, look, thanks, Mr Mayor. Effectively, the way I looked at it was an efficiency measure to help us do business better with the community.
Well, thank you. Councillors wishing to speak against the motion? Any other councillor wishing to speak for the motion?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Hazel.
I'm fully in support of the motion, but I've privately said in the past that I highlighted the issue here that an environmental exemption was obtained for this particular contract, and that's entirely appropriate in the circumstance given the type of services. But I think it does probably prompt us a little bit to start looking at the environmental footprint of contractors that we deal with, and I'd like to see over time some policy development around that and looking at the types of people that we're doing business with and their impact on the environment, and whether that means that we start thinking about ethical purchasing and these sorts of things.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion?
Can I just...
Councillor Patterson, yes.
Following along Councillor Hazelman's line of conversation, and I've spoken about it regularly, mainly at briefings, I do have a problem with the evaluation criteria price being 35%. I believe it should be higher, and I think it is now probably appropriate, Councillor Hazelman's brought up his issue with it, that we probably should have a look at that. I just do not believe if you're going to get a new car, 35% of the price of it doesn't need to be 100% of your consideration, but it should be higher than 35%.
Councillor Patterson. Any other councillor wishing to speak for? For, Councillor?
Or for the motion. Just on the evaluation criteria conversation, councils have enormous buying power. This is a massive contract that goes possibly over 5 years and over, well, it was budgeted for over $1 million. So when we make these large purchases, we do have a lot of power in that we can affect more broad change, social change, and whether that means local content is considered, which it is. 10% goes towards how much they contribute to our economy, which flows down into the small businesses in the town. And environmental content is just as important, because we've seen corporations change their entire policies based on social movements. So if the public see local government stepping up to their responsibility in being accountable in where their spending goes, the public will be, they'll feel more empowered to do the same. So it does make a difference. Price is not everything, and I'm more than happy to accept this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Sommer. Any other councillor wishing to speak for or against? Councillor Giovanetti.
I think we've covered it, Mr Mayor.
I think we have. All in favour? Against? Carried. Now, councillors, item 8.3, May 2017 monthly financial report. We have a motion on page 42, or a recommendation, sorry. Do we have a councillor wishing to move that recommendation as the motion? Councillor Osvari. You can't hide. Do I have a seconder, please?
Mayor, through you, I invite Mr Teitzel.
Yes.
To give us an overview, if he would be so kind.
Councillor Tyson. Mr Tyson. Sorry.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'm not sure whether that's a promotion.
Nor am I.
I'll refer councillors to the attachment to the report in your agendas, which starts on page 289, and talk about operating performance firstly. So our year-to-date underlying operating position is currently higher than forecast at the end of May. This is due largely to animal registration fees coming in earlier than we had initially planned, and also a higher uptake of new registrations of animals. Combined with that, there's some operating grants that we've received a month earlier than originally expected, and that's the Roads to Recovery grant, some grants for the Art Museum, and activities in the park being received earlier than expected. If I can just quickly talk about grants being received earlier than expected, we're expecting that the operating performance will remain above budget right to the end of the financial year, and this is due to receiving $6 million worth of our financial assistance grant for the 17-18 year in this financial year. So that makes this financial year look really good and makes next financial year not as good as it would have been. But over the course of the 2 years, it all balances out. In terms of financial health, we're tracking at the low risk level at the end of May, and it's forecast that we'll remain at a fairly low risk level, again due to the financial assistance grant being received earlier than expected. So that puts an extra $6 million worth of cash into our account. Capital expenditure is progressing fairly well at this stage, $32.5 million worth of $42 million forecast spend at the end of May. Currently on track to spend what I estimate to be around 90% of the capital budget. We won't hit the 100%, and that's due to some underspends on things like Cosgrove 3, but also some significant capital projects. An example of that would be the Wellsford Street roadworks, which is slightly behind schedule, and that will have some overruns into next financial year. Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Teisel, for that comprehensive report. And just to add to that, I know we do call on Mr Teisel each month or each quarter to give us an update on our financial reports. Timing of payment seems to be a very frequent issue. So thanks for explaining that. It can look remarkably good one month and then not so good the following month, depending on the timing. But all in all, we're on line to have a very balanced way forward. Sorry, Councillor Summer, did you wish to add to that?
It's very comprehensive.
Good. Any other councillor wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion?
Can I just say that June's a very good time to have a monthly report, because you get the final summary next month. And according to what we've been told, it's gone very well. So looking forward to that final report on the last 12 months of the financial year.
Good, thank you, Councillor Patterson. Any other councillor wishing to comment either for or against? Good. Councillor Orazvari, any closing comments?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
All in favour, councillors? Against? Motion carried. Now, item 8.4, we have the adoption of various policies as printed on page 45 of our agendas. Do I have a councillor wishing to move the recommendation as listed? Councillor O'Keefe. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Summer. Councillor O'Keefe.
Fairly straightforward. Adoption of the various policies on page 45. The governance team initiated an organisational-wide review of all existing council policies and corporate procedures following the local council election back in October 2016. The policies below as in the agenda are now recommended as outcomes from this review. Obviously, one of the new ones being the live streaming and recording of council meetings, which is encouraging transparency and obviously better community engagement. The freedom of information policy, gifts and benefits, civic recognition, exercise of delegations and conflict of interest policy. These policies have been reviewed and assessed on their content and purpose. It is recommended that these policies now be adopted with what is considered to be minor changes.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sutton. I've ticked the wrong box. How about Councillor Summer? Would you like to add any comments?
You can speak if you want to. I might just say a few words on the gifts and benefits policy, which is one of the ones that we are updating. Just for the benefit of councillors and the public, it has a requirement that councillors must register all the gifts that we're given. I believe the threshold is $20, very generous. So even cups of coffee can add up to over $20. So essentially we're not able, or well, we can, so long as we register the gift. So yeah, there's just no room for extortion or corruption in this council, which is terrific, and we just need to be mindful of that moving forward.
Well, that's handy to know that there's no room for corruption.
I'm reassured.
Yeah, I'm very reassured.
Get a warm feeling.
Thank you, Councillor. Excuse me, any councillor wishing to speak against this motion? For the motion?
I'd just like to make a comment regarding the gifts and benefits policy. I appreciate Councillor Summer giving me the $20 warning and up to $14.60, I think.
Yeah.
I'm approaching that key figure.
You said that eating bucket roll this morning, Councillor Patterson.
No sauce, I'm understood.
Councillor Patterson, any other councillor wishing to add comment either for or against? None. Back to you, Councillor O'Keefe. Any closing
One final
comments?
comment. I'd just like to wish Will all the best who looks after our live streaming. He's actually moving on. So I'd just like to wish him well in his new venture.
Yes, I'll reiterate those comments. Thank you, Will. Yeah. He has his earmuffs on his council. He's never been listening. Good work, and you were a pioneer in setting this up. Thank you, Damien. All in favour of the motion, councillors? Against? Motion carried. Now, councillors, item 8.5 on page 48, we have a recommendation. Councillor, who would love to move this recommendation as the motion?
Move the recommendation.
Councillor Hazelman, thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Summer. Councillor Hazelman.
Oh, not much to say, Mr Mayor. These occur on a monthly basis. They're provided for information to see the status of various contracts as they're moving through the organisation towards a decision. A couple of them that are listed here have had decisions made tonight. Others will reappear in future council agendas.
Good, thank you. Councillor Summer, any addition?
Just that the recommendation is noting the publicly advertised contracts that are awarded under delegation. There's certain levels of finance that are delegated to council staff, and these are under that delegation. So it's just a matter of being transparent. If we look at contract number 1755, which is Cosgrove 3 landfill construction of perimeter fencing, and we can see that that fence costs over $130,000. That's a good indication of why we need to borrow for Cosgrove 3 moving forward. Landfills are expensive, and when you consider that's just a partial cost of a very enormous project out there at Cosgrove, it does partially justify this $6 million loan that will see us into the future. I'll also draw attention to 1784, that's electric vehicle feasibility and business case. Now, my understanding is that has also been funded with some money from the Sustainability Fund, which is terrific because that's a landfill levy that's supposed to go back to renewables and supposed to go back to the environment, but it's been locked up for many years. So they're actually letting this out to councils who are willing to do joint procurement and collaborate with surrounding councils so that they can really make a difference. So if you can imagine electric vehicles being in council fleet across Moira, Campaspe, we'd be driving these little electric cars, and we'd really have to have charge points in between all the shires to make it feasible. Otherwise, you'd just be stuck on the side of the road. So it's really important that we have these alliances, and the Goulburn Broken Greenhouse Alliance are the ones who are pushing that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. If we get the Hyperloop going, there's no need for electric cars. Councillors, any councillor wishing to speak against this motion? For the motion? Councillor Hazelman?
No, Mr Mayor.
All in favour of the motion? Against? Motion carried. Now, councillors, item 8.6, another monumental document, especially that this is the first, for many councillors, the first council plan that we've been involved in, or that they've been involved in. This is very important. It sets the pathway for the next 4 years of this council and this community. So do I have a councillor wishing to move that recommendation as a motion? Councillor, you had your hand up early, yes, you're well ahead of the pack there. Councillor O'Keefe, you'd like to move the recommendation as a motion. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Abdullah. So, Councillor O'Keefe, you've got your first cab off the rank.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just would like to move the motion on the council plan on page 51. In January 2017, we began discussions on the development of the council plan for 2017 to 2021 to develop ideas for the next 4 years. This has been a lengthy and, again, in-depth process in which has included input from the community, obviously council staff, CEO and officers, and of course us fellow councillors. Again, as a new councillor, I'd like to point out I've found this process to be extremely interesting. It's a very valuable insight to what our priorities will be and what they are for the Greater Shepparton. We've worked to engage with the community and to seek feedback from surveys as well as submissions, which then allows us to work on those submissions and work together with the community. And as I've mentioned with the budget, this is the community's plan as well, obviously the community plan. As councillors, our goal is to do, again, the best we can, and that is that we have tried to do that. So this has been such an interesting process. We know we've had some changes, we've had discussions, but at the end of the day, this plan I think is really, really doable, and I think it's very achievable, and I think the community are hopefully going to be very happy.
Oh, thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor Abdullah.
As a first-time councillor, it was very interesting to be a part of this process. I'm happy with the level of involvement from the councillors. So there were workshops, brainstorming sessions, discussions, debates with the executive leadership team and the councillors, and that resulted in a solid outline of the plan. And the draft plan. So the draft plan was released for community consultation. Community consultation sessions and workshops were arranged by the council. Just want to note that attendance of community members in some of these sessions was less than desirable, so that can be improved in future. Also, I believe that there is some room for improvement in the advisory committee consultation arrangements. So rather than involving them towards the end of the process, there could have been early engagements. Some areas that are not highlighted at the strategic plan level, example, formulation of gender equity policy, were sort of causing me some concern, but now I understand that the annual business plan covers this area, and Council's People and Development Strategy 2017 and 2021 is going to cover gender equity policy for the organisation. Overall, I'm satisfied with the council plan. It reflects our community's aspirations and it provides objective measures of success, which is a very good improvement because now the key indicators of success have been identified and we can monitor the progress through that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. Just note that Councillor Summer has just left the room, please. Do we have any councillor wishing to speak against this motion? Now, any other councillor wishing to add their comments for the motion? Councillor Aswari, you look a bit...
Mr Mayor, I was particularly interested at the special council meeting that we had the other day when there was a range of submitters that presented their aspirations and views in relation to what they should be included, and I was particularly impressed with the Greater Shepparton basketball presentation in terms of where they see themselves moving forward, and I certainly hope that we can achieve some great things for them in the next 4 years, particularly in relation to the fact that it sits at the entrance to the positive thing if we can move that along.
Thank you, Councillor Aswari. Any other councillor wishing to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Hazen, for the motion?
Yes, for the motion, Mr Mayor, and I'd agree with the comments that have been passed about the process that we've gone through to get to this point. I would say that all planning by definition is aspirational, And some of the criticism of council plans in the past has been that it's been strong and aspirational, but a bit light on the detail in terms of performance indicators and targets to be reached. And I'm really pleased to see that that aspect has been really addressed in this plan, that there are capacity now for an annual review, for a tracking of performance, and reporting back to the community about performance against those targets. So I think that's really good. It also contains elements of that performance measurement that's both qualitative and quantitative, so that we've got particular targets that be addressed, but also the quality of performance is being addressed at the same time. So I think it's a particularly good outcome.
Good, thank you, Councillor Hazelman. Just please note Councillor Summers back in the room. Any other councillor wishing to speak for the motion or against? Councillor Patterson for the motion.
Look, I'd like to support, especially Councillor Hazelman's comments. I'd also like to congratulate all the councillors, especially the new ones. We're very conscious, I believe, when you come in as a new councillor, you can be easily led down the path that you might necessarily not want to go. But I think they showed that they knew what they wanted in this council plan, as well as us older councillors. We didn't want a document that's full of motherhood statements that we could get to the end of it and go, yahoo, we've done all this. This is more of a strategic document that we can work to, and as Councillor Hazelman said, we can actually tick off our successes as we go a lot easier than we could for the last one. So I congratulate everyone involved. It's been a very long process. It's as long as the budget, basically, for us. A lot of input, and I'd also endorse Councillor Osvari's comments when we have citizens come in and address us regarding their concerns. I think that's a really important process, because it brings some things that can get to your back of your mind forward, and the Basketball Association is a perfect example of that. And I think that needs to continue happening. Some of these groups are very organised, and it's great to hear them, and you have the confidence to support them when you know they're working hard themselves. So congratulations to everyone involved. I think it's been a great process, and it's a great outcome.
Good, thank you, Councillor Patterson. Any other councillor wishing to add their comments? For or against? Councillor Sutton.
I think it's a great document. It's an easy read document. It's not pages and pages, and I'd just like to thank everybody who worked on it. And it was a very interesting time to be working on it. I think it's a great document.
Good, thank you. Any other councillor wishing to add their comments for or against? That means it's my turn, councillors. I'd like to just echo the comments of all the other councillors and offer my personal thanks to the organisation, all the directors and all the staff that have worked very hard and long and to put this together, especially when you're putting together a council plan alongside a budget that obviously happens every 4 years. It's a double whammy, to a degree, and I know councillors went away on a bit of a weekend together, and I distinctly recall some rather robust debates during that period of time, and I found that actually quite inspirational, that the new councillors went backward in coming forward and expressing their opinions and their aspirations over the next 4 years. So that's what this document's all about. It's an aspirational document that does actually map the roadmap forward for this council and this community. Having said that, this is a living document. It gets reviewed every 12 months, and it has to be a flexible document because things do change. We have an election coming up in the next 18 months or so, a state election. That could certainly change our way forward, depending on who's in power and what priorities that particular government has. So having said that, we've mapped the way forward. As I said, it was rather robust, the discussions, and the community engagement was also rather robust as well. We think we've put together something that incorporates all the aspirations of all the community, not just councillors. So again, I'd like to offer my thanks, and I'm sure Mr Hay will probably add some comments to this after I've finished. So having said that, Peter, thank you very much, and you can...
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I thought I might just highlight some of the key aspects of the council plan. What we intend to focus on and deliver over the next 4 years. So that includes the very exciting SAM project. We currently see a 5-storey building going up in Shepparton. That's the courthouse. Our second 5-storey building will be the SAM project. Under economic development, there's work to activate the mall, Maud Street Mall activation. So that'll be exciting to see that Shepparton Showgrounds multi-purpose pavilion. We've also got underbuilt, we have Maud Street upgrade stages 1B and 1C. We have New Dookie Road, Old Dookie Road happening at the moment. We've got the progression of the Shepparton Sports Stadium. We've got progression of the relocation of the Shepparton Aerodrome. That'll be exciting to see where that takes us, that one. In the environmental field, we talked about Cosgrove. Cosgrove is our major capital project, and this area of the environment picks up on greening Shepparton and our tree planting program, and visually that's where you'll see a difference over the next 4 years with the amount of trees that will be planted throughout the municipality. Significant change you will see in the canopy. We're aiming for a 40% canopy. I think we're around about something less than 20%, so as you can see just from those percentages, the amenity, the visual amenity of our area will change over those 4 years. So that's a little bit of a highlight. There's much more than that, but as you can see, lots of exciting projects over 4 years.
Thank you, Mr. Harriott. Being said, councillors, I go back to Councillor O'Keefe, I think. Ready? No? Good, thank you very much. All in favour? Councillors? Against? Motion carried. Item 8.7 on page 55. We have a recommendation that the Council adopt the rating strategy 2017-2021. Councillors, who would like to move that recommendation as a motion? Councillor O'Keefe. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Osvari. Councillor O'Keefe.
Main outcome of this review was for the next 4 years to maintain stability for the ratepayers whilst gaining administration efficiencies. The draft strategy 2017-2021 was endorsed by Council on Tuesday the 18th of April. The public notice was given on inviting public comments and feedback. Submission period ended and we have no submissions were received, so that the Council, my suggestion that the Council adopt the rating strategy 2017-2021.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor Orasvari.
Yes, Mr Mayor, thank you. I take note of the comments by Councillor O'Keefe. The only thing I would say is that whilst I support the strategy, I would have liked to have seen that point 5 remain, which talks about the full payment option for the payment of rates, together with an incentive reduction in percentage, like a discount if people pay them in full. And I think a couple of my fellow councillors have also expressed some surprise in relation to that, but again, that's just my individual opinion for the purposes of the exercise tonight, but I fully support the rating strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Orasvari. Any councillor wishing to speak against this motion? For the motion, Councillor Summer.
I will speak for the motion. Again, I do have an issue that the amount raised by the municipal charge will be maintained at general rate revenue of 12%. And I did go through why I thought that the municipal charge is an unfair charge. Only 50% of Victorian councils have the charge at all, and if it was up to me, I'd stagger it down to be removed completely over a certain number of years. Basically, it's a $7.84 million discount for the top end of town that everyone pays for. And being called the municipal charge, being part of a rating strategy, it's not the most engaging or sexy thing you could think about and really look into, but that, considering roads gets a lot of complaints, the only other issue that would get on par, if not more complaints, is the rating system and people's rates and the bills that they get in their letterbox. So I find it astonishing that the public didn't offer one submission on how we can better do this. When you hear the word municipal charge, when you hear the word rating strategy, people either don't equate that to the bill that they get in their letterbox enough to give us their opinion, or it just sounds so complicated that people switch off. I think we need a better language when we're talking about these things and being really clear in what we're trying to do. So it differs from the budget. It's not about how much we're collecting, it's about how we collect it. So I'm not happy with the municipal charge, but through discussions with other councillors, I believe that there is really no point in putting up my hand to object. I think that this has been a team effort again, and I know that the staff have put in a lot of good work, so I am conceding that the municipal charge will stay for at least another year.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Any other councillor wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion? Patterson.
I share Councillor Zvari's concerns about removing the full payment option in February. We're not sure when that offer will expire. I believe it's going to be before the Christmas break. I totally understand and accept why it's been done, and that is that a lot of people get themselves into trouble not thinking about how they're going to pay their rates. This way they're forced to take on a plan that will ease their burden and won't leave them in a position in February of saying, I need to find $1,500, I can't do it, and next thing they're in trouble with back interest, etc. I understand that, but I'm prepared to give it 12 months to see how it works and how the public accept it. I think that's the best way of doing it, and if it doesn't work as well as we hope, then we'll look at adjusting something next year.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Any other councillor wishing to add any comments for or against? That being said, Councillor O'Keefe, any closing comments? No. All in favour of the motion, councillors? Against? Motion carried. Item 9.1, councillors, on page 61. Before we get to that, it was remiss of me not to make mention of former Councillor Kevin Ryan being in the public gallery tonight. I just wanted to note of his actual existence in the building here tonight and his intimidating stance in front of the councillors, but thank you for that, Councillor Ryan, or former Councillor Ryan.
Councillor John Gray, if you're going to...
Well, we don't want to go back that far. He's the most...
Future councillor?
Well, anyway, thank you, Gunnar, for being here tonight, and welcome. Now we'll move on to item 9.1 on page 61, councillors. It's Nixon Street Centre of the Road car parking. Do I have a councillor wishing to move that recommendation as a motion? Councillor Orizvari. And a seconder, please. Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor Orizvari.
Oh, look, this is a bit of deja vu, this one, because I remember when this came up way back when in the past, and there was considerable discussion and debate about... I just couldn't get my head around the cost that was attributed to parking spaces, and ultimately council saw common sense and reduced it to 4 spaces down to 16, but apparently that wasn't enough, and subsequently the matter ended up at VCAT, and we had a victory, I think, from recollection. But essentially what this is that if people who are familiar with that part of town, that I think from recollection, that's the only part of town which doesn't have centre of road parking, and it's very wide. You could land a jumbo on that stretch of road there, so it's pretty appropriate that we incorporate that into the parking strategy and put down the markings and line. It'll give us additional parking, particularly when Deakin Reserve is rocking and rolling, and it's just part of the planning process.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Keefe.
Mayor, look, I think it's crucial that we try and continue to add more parking. I mean, the town is growing in every way. We've had lots of development. One of the businesses along there has actually increased his business out of sight, so we need, obviously, putting this forward of more parking. I think it's a sign of the times. We've got so much happening here in Shepparton. I think if we can add some more parking, it's going to encourage more people into the CBD. It's going to be another gateway into the CBD with longer-term parking. So I think it's crucial that we actually, where we can, we add more parking. We're losing a bit of parking in Walsford Street. I think this is a great, compensation to give some more parking back, where we need it. Long terms where we need it.
Thank you, Councillor. Any councillor wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion? You, Councillor Orizvari.
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
All in favour? Against? Motion carried. Item 9.2, councillors. On page 65, we have a recommendation in regard to the Goulburn Valley Highway Bypass Action Group, update of terms of reference and appointment of new community member. Councillors, who'd like to move this as a motion? Councillor Giovanetti. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Giovanetti.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd just like to move the recommendation on page 65, which states that item 1, we adopt the revised terms of reference to include explicit reference to the staged western route adopted by Council resolution in May 2016. 2, that we thank Brian Hicks for his long-standing involvement in the Goulburn Valley Highway Bypass Action Group and acknowledge his resignation from the group. And 3, having considered the nominations received for the appointment to the Goulburn Valley Highway Bypass Action Group, appoint the following nominee to the Goulburn Valley Highway Bypass Action Group for the remainder of the current 2-year term, commencing on 21st of June and concluding on the 15th of August 2018, and that being Leslie Hart. I'd like to firstly congratulate Leslie on the appointment to this Bypass Action Group. Over the next few years is going to be an extremely important group that we will be working with in relation to the bypass. I'd also like to thank Brian Hicks for his involvement on that group, and I know that he did have significant involvement, and we do thank him for his achievements over the time that he was on it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Patterson.
And I think Councillor Ginnivetti covered it very well.
Indeed. Do we have any councillor wishing to speak against this motion? For the motion, Councillor Summer. Thank you.
I just want to take this opportunity to reinforce the importance of this committee. We're talking about up to $260 million that we'll be asking from the federal government for this bypass. It really is important for our region that this gets built. It's going to manage our long-term traffic growth because we are a growing community. It will make the roads safer. It will relieve the congestion in the middle of the CBD. It will reduce accidents, especially trucks. It will position future land use development along that site and improve the amenity. So we're looking here, we're going to include explicit reference to the staged western route adopted by Council resolution, and the interest of that is to get the second river crossing, and the fact that we've been pushing for the western route for so long, and it does seem like the government is responding. If we were to change that now, it would set us back probably about a decade. So we'd be looking at another 10 years before anyone starts to consider giving us enough money to begin this project. So I am more than happy to continue with what we adopted by resolution earlier.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Any other councillor wishing to speak against? Or? Councillor Hazelman.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very pleased to see this come forward and in this format, because you might recall almost 2 years ago I raised a number of concerns in respect to the governance matters relating to this particular committee, and things that had occurred that didn't get the appropriate amount of council oversight and that should have been dealt with in a more appropriate manner. Even referencing the resolution of May 2016 adopting the western route. This was already appearing in council and state government publications as the council's preferred position, and I think what we're doing now, we're bringing this committee, this advisory committee, back into centre stage and making it the vehicle for change, not bypassing it, no pun intended.
A couple of puns
or assuming certain things without due governance processes, and I think this is really good. And again, as others have said, Brian Hicks involved with this for some time, and we acknowledge his contribution to it. And also pleasing to see Leslie Hart's put her hand up, and I know Leslie through other capacities, and I'm sure she'll be a very valuable member of that committee.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor wishing to add comment for or against? I'll just add my comments to this as well. Thank you, councillors. Myself and the CEO, Mr. Harrider, on this actual bypass action group, and I can assure you that It's very valuable. It just forms a part of a group type of advocacy that council already advocate very strongly on every possible occasion in regard to securing funds for this bypass, and of course our local state member does the same, as does many other community organisations. So this is just another angle that we, I shouldn't say attack, but approach and advocate very robustly for this project to the state government. It's a very valuable group. There's some great people on this committee now, and I just want to offer my thanks to Brian Hicks as well, and I welcome Leslie Hart's contribution to this committee. I think it'll all help achieve our final aims, which is to get this bypass up and running sooner rather than later. So thank you for that. That being said, Councillor Giovanetti, any closing comments?
I think you've summed it up very well, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. All in favour? Councillors? Against? Motion carried. Item 9.3. Councillors, and I think this is one of the items that our former councillor Ryan has come here tonight to listen to and hear. Item 9.3 on page 70, we have a recommendation concerning the Tatura Park Advisory Group, some membership changes there. So do I have a councillor wishing to move that? Councillor Patterson. And a seconder, please. Councillor Giovanetti. Councillor Patterson, do you wish to speak?
Yes, former chairman of this group. I would like to move this recommendation. Chantel Langley, Mitch Fox, Sean O'Shannessy, David Quick, Craig Rouse, Noel Russell, Mr Ryan himself, Nick Taylor, Carl Walters and Graham Dew. Several of those gentlemen and ladies have been in that committee for quite a while. I hope for the future of Tatura Park, there's been a lot of money put in there. There's been a lot of benefit for the local community as well as the Greater Shepparton community. It is not nearly finished, but it's getting close, and I'd like to see us concentrate over the next couple of years of finishing off things like downpipes, etc., bring to that stage where we can sort of tick it off. There'll always be room for more development, etc., but it's very close to being completed. This group are very passionate about it, as we know some of the people sitting in this room are. It's a, you know, at risk of saying it's a jewel of the crown of Tatura, and probably the jewel of the crown of our municipality in a lot of ways, as far as for projects, etc., or events. There's an event there basically every weekend. The big one, of course, is Dairy Week, but that's only one of probably 2 dairy or cattle events. The rest are horses, and it's very big. It's a very competitive field, literally, excuse the pun. With horse events, you need to be on top of your game, you need to be competitive, and you need to have your best presentation of your venue. So we need to be mindful of that and keep that in a forefront of our mind. And these people, I have total confidence they'll be able to come to fruition and bring that to fruition. Sorry.
Councillor. Councillor Giovanetti.
I'd just like to endorse comments of Councillor Patterson. I think that the Tatura Park Advisory Group have done a fantastic job over there. We had the opportunity early in our term to visit the complex, and ex-councillor Ryan was there on the day to lead us and show us through, and I thought it was an excellent facility. And the work that the Tatura community and this particular group have put in to that particular facility is exemplary, really. And it'd be great if that effort could be replicated in other areas of the municipality.
Thank you, Councillor. Any councillor wishing to speak against the motion? Or the motion? To you, Councillor Patterson.
I think it's been summarised pretty well.
Thank you. All in favour of the motion? Against? Motion carried. Councillors, item 9.4.
Mayor, as I indicated at the start of the meeting, I'll declare a conflict of interest in relation to this matter, as I've got a direct involvement with land impacted by the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Hazelman. I won't forget to call you back this time. Thank you. Now, councillors, we have a recommendation on page 75. Do I have a councillor wishing to move this recommendation as a motion? Oh, no, we can't close the doors, Councillor Summer. That would impact on our security policy. So, councillors, who wishes to move this recommendation as a motion? Councillor Patterson, a seconder, please. Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Patterson.
Yes, this was put out for consultation. There was about 16 submitters. It goes to a an independent planning committee meeting next week. This is merely for our information and for the community's information. The planning panel, the independent planning panel, will hand down their findings, and that will give council a good direction on proceedings after that.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Abdullah.
It is at this stage. It is only an information item on agenda, as far as my understanding is concerned, and we wait to hear from the independent panel about the report.
Good, thank you. Any councillor wishing to speak against this motion? Councillor Orazvari.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. The C199 amendment before council today can best be described as a many-headed hydra of technicality, and in so many ways is generally reflective of planning issues in general. To understand and then appreciate the implications of our planning decisions is indeed a challenging process. The effect of the revision is to reflect and support the ongoing use and development of the GV harness and greyhound racing facility, and I'm conscious of the fact that this matter will go to a panel. The development only would occur in accordance with an approved master plan, which is the GV harness racing study, which is to be included as a reference document at 2109. It must consider the effect that use or development in an investigation area may have on nearby existing or proposed developments. It's important to remember that the word consider is used in its simplest form, which means, in essence, think carefully about it. There is no further binding obligation. In general terms, on the topic of planning scheme amendments, one of the most critical aspects of them is that they need to be transparent and complete in terms of policies and provisions that are in fact relied upon to make decisions about those planning matters. The amendments sought regarding 2104 and 09, to my way of thinking, is pushing the view that the reference document is to be included as part of the planning scheme. It's the combination of these amendments and the master plan that is complicated, as they are interwoven. C199 affects the land, which is the precinct itself. I also understand and appreciate the primary purpose of this amendment is to invest in a form of protection of the precinct itself, based upon the fact that the investigation study is complete. But equally, I am of the view it also affects that other land contained within Investigation Area 1 as well, by placing controls on non-precinct land. It would be naive to think that this was also not an intended consequence. One of the questions I cannot adequately resolve at this point is that it appears the planning amendment does not adopt the water technology flood behaviour report, and the reason for this may well be that it is explained to me is that it is different to a flood study under the Victorian Floodplain Management Strategy, as in flood behaviour versus flood study. Amendment C199 also proposes an amendment to Schedule 4 of the Special Use Zone. In short, what the effect would appear to be is that in relation to the land in relation to Investigation Area 1, is that applications for use, subdivisions, buildings or works would all be exempt from notice requirements pursuant to the relevant sections of the Planning and Environment Act. I would speculate that the Planning and Environment Act supports the very issue of transparency in relation to public land use decisions. Part of that process, I would suggest, is to allow people to continue to receive all those things that we take for granted, which could potentially affect their well-being, their amenity and their rights of objection or appeal. These amendments to the schedule, in my assessment, potentially seek to curtail those. In short, whilst I've continued to consider the merits...
Councillor Orazrai, would you like some time?
Yes, I would.
Councillors, are we all in favour? Continue, please.
Thank you. In short, whilst I have continued to consider the merits of this area at every stage of the process, assessing the pros and cons for a number of years, I'm still troubled by the process and outcomes it will have in Investigation Area 1. The land the Special Use Zone centres on is the harness racing precinct, but in reality, by implementing the C199 amendment, this will create a lasting ripple effect on the whole of the Investigation Area 1. The proposed changes under those planning environment sections are not supported by me, and this amendment does not give me comfort regarding equitable development in the future of this area, and I'm very conscious of the fact that there is a planning panel next week. And for the uninitiated, a planning panel is actually allows the public to participate in planning and environmental decisions. They independently assess the proposals by considering the submissions, conducting hearings and preparing reports. The critical thing for me are that planning panels are only advisors and make recommendations. The final decision is left to the appropriate statutory body or the minister. So I just put it out there in terms of my position in relation to it, and I've been very consistent in relation to my concerns about the future direction of this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Orozvari. Other councillor wishing to speak for the motion? Against the motion? Councillor Summer?
I'm in agreement with Councillor Orozvari in that I've lost a lot of confidence in this project, although the last few motions that have come to us I have consistently objected to and called divisions on. So I understand that this motion is just basically to note that it's going to a planning panel. So whether we pass the motion or don't pass the motion is a moot point here. I see the trotting track as an entity in itself that already has a state-imposed buffer from the EPA, and then we've embarked on this very complicated investigation Area 1 and based it on flood studies, and it's really difficult to predict flatwater flooding at the best of times, but we've used two studies in the process. One was an endorsed study, the other hadn't been endorsed and it wasn't completed, yet we based our master plan of the trotting track on that study. So for me it's inconsistent. I believe we need to start again in a few years and abandon investigation Area 1. I know now is not the time to do it, but how much land do we really need to protect one facility? It's given the public who live out there, the residents, they've had a lot of unrest and a lot of not knowing what their future holds. So in my opinion, we probably shouldn't have even embarked on it in the first place. I'll see what the planning panel has to say, but my opinion hasn't changed from the last time I objected and the time before that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors wishing to speak for the motion? Against? Against? Councillor Sutton?
Against, because I agree with Les and I agree with what Fern has said. I'm not comfortable with this amendment, probably because the land use, and as Fern said, there's a lot of land around the trotting track that I don't really think needs to be included in this plan. So I note that it's going to the panel, so I will wait and see what comes back from the panel, and then I'll form the way I want to vote.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Just for I shouldn't be asking for a point of clarification to myself, but I will. The motion before us is simply to note Council's officer's response outlined in this report for referral and presentation to an independent planning panel. And as has been noted, this motion is really just to alert ourselves and everyone to the fact that this is going to a planning panel. It's irrelevant whether, to be quite honest, whether this passes or not. It will go to a panel. So that's the point we're discussing.
The point that the independent panel will wonder where the officers are coming from, where the councillors are actually coming from, if they've put up this motion and relevant in that regard.
Won't change the fact that the planning panel will be...
Most unusual for the independent panel to be in this situation. They will wonder what's going on.
Said, councillors, that's the item before us here today. So that being said, I think everyone has had an opportunity to speak to the motion or for the motion and against. Councillor Patterson, I think you moved the motion. Would you like any closing comments?
Yes, I would. We have to be very conscious of the fact this is to basically, as Peter said, it is to inform us that it's the councillor's position to... No, sorry, getting that wrong. Note the officer's response. We've gone from noting their response into full-stage war regarding this project. All we've done is noted the response, right? We have to keep in mind it's going to a panel hearing. I agree with everyone when they've said it is very complicated, and it is very complicated. I, for one, are looking forward to seeing the panels, independent panels' response. That'll be, that'll have a big bearing on, I think, where we all go from there. I think we have to also keep in mind the flood study that we sometimes question, that same flood study was for that whole area, and in a not too distant future that flood study will cover all of Shepparton and Mooroopna. So it's not something we can pick and choose, it'll be covering all of Shepparton and Mooroopna, and that's not far off. So I'd just like to remind the councillors that the section 2 of the recommendation, note that council officers may exercise discretion to best achieve the general position adopted by council. With discussions that most of us had with council officers today, that was regarding if there's a small techo comes up to council, to the council officers at the hearing panel, they would have to say, oh, sorry, if we haven't got any discretion at all, they'd have to come back to council. And that's what it's all. The panel hearing is in Shepparton. It is open to the public. Councils, I know, will be attending. The public will be attending, so it'll be very open. We'll be all very conscious of what happens. So I would support and recommend to my fellow councillors, we do adopt it. Let's worry about the war. If we get to a war, this is only picking where we're going to stage that fight, if there is one, and to see if there needs to be an argument. So I'd highly recommend that councillors move that this recommendation become a motion and be passed, and then we can move on after the panel hearing.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. That being said, all councillors for the motion? Against?
All of division.
Indeed. Division being called. Councillors for the motion: Councillor Giovanetti, Councillor Abdullah, Councillor Patterson, Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor Adam. Against: Councillor Orisvari, Councillor Sutton, Councillor Summer. Motion carried. Oh, yes. Councillor Hazelwood. Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I said I wouldn't forget, but there you go. I really did.
Finally reminded, didn't he?
Thank you, councillors. Page 83, we have item 9.5, our International Engagement Policy 2017. We have a recommendation, Councillor Councillor Summer, you're up there pretty quick. Councillor Summer, you would like to move the recommendation the council adopt the International Engagement Policy?
Page 83, yes.
Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Orisvari. Councillor Summer.
This is a recommendation that Council adopt the International Engagement Policy, and I think this has been a fairly long time coming, considering we've had sister city relationships with many international countries for a long time now. I much prefer the approach of an engagement policy rather than an ad hoc approach, which has traditionally been the case. This way we've got predetermined outcomes and expectations, and we can be a bit more accountable for public spend when we do go on delegations overseas. Obviously that has to be flexible, and you can't guarantee that an outcome will occur, but if there's a reasonable chance that we could increase our fruit export opportunities, if we could attract investment or have student placement opportunities, those are really great things that could benefit our region. And we know that the Chinese have responded really well to Shepparton because we have so many great exports and the clean green food that they love to eat. Their response, according to our mayor, to the Great Things Happen Here campaign was just wonderful. They were all sitting around listening to speeches, but Councillor Adam and CEO Peter Harriott had a visual display of exactly what the region has to offer, with Charles Woolley's face at the forefront. And they were really pleased and stood up and clapped, which was unusual. So we know how to make an impact in Greater Shepparton. There was recent delegations, yes, again to China on invitation of the Premier, which happened to coincide with an election. And I must say that it was very brave of our Mayor, Dinny Adam, to go on that trip, because sometimes there's negative feedback from the public when councillors do engage in these delegations. But determining who and when we should go and where to is really clearly intended in this policy, and I think it's something that can only benefit Greater Shepparton.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Councillor Orasvari.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I fully support 150% the commentary by Councillor Summer, particularly in regard to from where we came in the past in terms of sending our Mayor overseas to the different locations. This policy that we've got now is a clear map in relation to how we deal with them. I personally would like to see that we're on a proactive footing in relation to making sure that we're across our relationships and cities and friendship city agreements, because as we were briefed previously, a lot of these in the past have just sort of melted away into the dust. I wouldn't like.
Thank you, Councillor. Any councillor wishing to speak against this motion? Or the motion?
I just wanted to make a comment. I think it's very important we've done this. As Councillor Vari said, some of these have just melted into the dust. There's also a couple have melted into our budget, which is a lot of money we don't need to be spending. You know, there's the one group come over and something about a trough in the conversation, but we don't need that. We need to have, on behalf of our road page, we need to have active people going and chasing business for mutual benefit between different sister cities, not an old boys club, you know, you come here and I'll go there. And that's what we don't. So highly recommend the update, and it'll be good.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors wishing to speak against the motion, for the motion, Councillor Sutton.
I'd like to note that each sister city and friendship city agreement should feature the following: a sunset clause, so we know it can end, a 12-month review period, agreed outcomes, the opportunity to extend the formal relationship, and a clear purpose of the agreement. And I think that's very important, because that tells us what we're looking for.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Any other councillor wishing to speak for or against? Councillor Summer, would you like some closing comments?
Just in relation to the melting into the budget, it wouldn't matter if we spent $10,000 or $10 when it comes to public perception. That's too much. So we really can't be more diligent. We can't be diligent enough when it comes to justifying the spend in sending people on something which is not a junket. It is a work trip, and they run off their feet the entire time, no time for sightseeing, and then they come back here and have an amazing network of international people that we can engage. So I'm happy.
Thank you, Councillor. That being said, councillors, all in favour of the motion? Against? Motion carried. Item 9.6, page 89, councillors. We have a recommendation in relation to the adoption of the Shepparton Railway Precinct Master Plan 2017. Councillor Summer, would you like to move that recommendation as a motion?
Thank you. On page 89 as reads.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor Orasvari. Councillor Summer.
So this is adopting the Shepparton Railway Precinct Master Plan and noting that future bids will be made to implement the findings and the recommendations of the Precinct's Master Plan. I think this is really exciting, and it's really important for Shepparton. When it comes to public transport, that's just going to be used more and more often as we grow and as people look for alternative forms of transport. And for many, it's the first impression for travellers when they arrive in Shepparton. They get off the train. So if they get off the train and they see a beautiful courtyard environment that's quite beautiful, they're going to remember that, because the first 30-second impression does stay in your mind. They'll be thirsty when they get off that train and probably want a good coffee, so food vans would be a terrific addition, and that's included here. they might be coming to visit someone who is in the new upgraded hospital, so there could be flower stalls, but really it's prime real estate. This is where people should go because the people are delivered to their doorstep. And we will get more people as we get these investments in Shepparton finished. One of those is the courthouse. We'll see people transporting themselves from Melbourne in suits and suitcases and things. Suitcases and suits. You know, briefcase, that thing. Briefcase, yeah. And also for Sam, apparently, Sam's going to attract apparently 1,000 people a week, which is a very ambitious number. But if that's true, they will be using a train. And hopefully this is a predecessor for increased train services as well, and an upgrade to the train carriages. As we've seen, it's become a political football, and eventually someone's going to...
Former Councillor Ryan.
Broken the chair, Mr Mayor.
He's still done less damage there than his knee seats.
They'll finish.
Sorry, Councillor Summer. Your words carried a lot of weight there, Councillor Summer. Quite literally. Thank you for that. Councillor Orris.
No, I can't opt that.
No,
Mr. Mayor, sorry.
Any councillor wishing to speak against this motion? Any other councillors wishing to speak for the motion? Councillor Abdullah.
I just want to say that exciting times, and it's wonderful to see that we finally have a master plan for Shepparton Railway Precinct. Of course, everybody knows that this railway precinct currently has got a very haggard look. It's desperately in need of a makeover, and as Councillor Summer has noted, that you know, it's the first impression that counts. So visitors coming from outside Shepparton need to get a very positive first impression, and I think this master plan, having a master plan, is the first step in the right direction. So well done.
Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. Any other councillor wishing to speak against or for the motion? For the motion, Councillor O'Keefe.
I think it's part of exactly what we're, really focusing on with our travel. The rail precinct is so important at the moment. So to have something on the table, on the map, that we're moving in that direction, I think is a good argument. We're putting our hand up for more funding. We're putting up our hand for more times, more rail times. I actually travelled to Melbourne recently on the train, and it's a fairly poor service, I will say. So I'm really hoping in the future that this is going to continue to grow, and this is part of our plan.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Any other councillor wishing to add comment for or against? Councillor Patterson, for the motion?
Yeah, for the motion. Our plan is a long way back. Made two big blues with this town. One is they organised to turn our backs on the railway and also the river. Currently, modern thinking is that we're changing that. We have River Connect, for instance, it's more drawing our attention to the river and realising what a great asset that is. It would have been easy 30 years ago to think about rail and think, well, that rail's dying. We've got terrific trucks to bring our equipment to Shepparton. Everyone's got a car. Why do you get in a train? Train services will improve, and it's going to be a very important part of Shepparton. Those that are familiar with Bendigo, you basically end up in the CBD and you get off the train, and that's something we've noticed, and this will lead to that. So. It'll be a great step forward when it all happens and opens our access to the railway line up. It'll be a very good thing for Shepparton, especially with Melbourne moving north. It will certainly be an option to get on a fast train and be in Shepparton in 30 minutes when you live, half an hour from Melbourne.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson.
Turn your dressing gown down to get it.
Yeah, that too. Councillors, any other councillor wishing to speak against or for the motion? The fact that no one has spoken against the motion, I'll add my comments. In light of the fact that we've received now our first rather significant injection of funding to upgrade our rail services of $43.5 million, I think it's crucial now that we have a plan moving forward for our precincts. We can see that hopefully in a few years we'll gain more money to complete our $186 million project of actually having proper 8 velocity services to Shepparton. And if that be the case, we need to have a precinct that actually is fitting for these travellers to come and visit and travel back. So yes, the precinct master plan, we've all seen it. It's quite impressive. It'll be a great addition to the greater Shepparton streetscape. So that being said, all in favour? No, sorry, Councillor Summer, would you like any closing comments? Or Councillor Hazelman, would you like to add?
I was voting.
Good. You were just miming there. Councillor Summer?
Only that I was remiss in not thanking the people who submitted, and they were quite detailed submissions, and they've all been assessed and considered to be relevant, so we have done some changes to the master plan based on submissions.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. All in favour of the motion, councillors? Against? Motion carried. Item 9.7. On page 99, we have a recommendation in reference to the adoption of the Landscape Plan Guide 2017 for development proposals in the City of Greater Shepparton, the Shire of Campaspe and the Shire of Moira. Councillors, who'd like to move this recommendation as a motion? Councillor Patterson. A seconder, please. Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor Patterson.
Yes, as you said, this is a joint initiative from the three councils. For those that aren't familiar with, if you put a planning application in, you also, for a commercial area and I presume some residential areas, you need to put a landscape plan in as well. We don't want to see someone building a big shed that's going to house people and planting a row of red gums along the front. So there was not a guide for those people when they submit those plans. So there's been a template drawn up by the three councils, and this makes the job a lot easier for people applying for permits. They can now go to the landscape plan guide, have a look at it and choose what they want and know it'll be accepted.
Thank you. Councillor O'Keefe.
I think Councillor Patterson covered most of that. Obviously, we do want to make sure that we have sustainable and appropriate landscape developments to have a beautiful urban feel amongst our community, and we always don't want to lose sight of that. So I think this is a great guide for the developers, commercial, residential. We just need to keep all the greenery happening. So, yeah, definitely support this one.
Great, thank you. Councillors wishing to speak against the motion? None are for the motion? Thank you. Back to Councillor Patterson. Any closing comments?
No, thank you.
All in favour of the motion? Against? Motion carried. Item 9.8. On page 106, a recommendation in reference to the adoption of Urban Design Framework, Shepparton North and South Business Areas Addendum for 2017. Who'd like to move this recommendation as a motion? Summer? A seconder, please. Councillor Hazelin. Councillor Summer.
Shall I read out what it says? That the Council adopt the Urban Design Framework, Shepparton North and South Business Areas. Note Council Officers' intention to prepare and exhibit a planning scheme amendment to include the recommendations of the Urban Design Framework, Shepparton North and South Business Areas into the Greater Shepparton Planning Scheme, including the design and development overlays. And note that future budget bids will be made to implement the findings and recommendations of the Urban Design Framework. Shepparton North and South Business Areas 2017 to plan and improve the public realm in Shepparton North. Now, my understanding of this is that we have done some work around entrances into Shepparton North and Shepparton South Business Areas, and entrances has come up consistently in my entire time as a councillor, so it's great to see some work being done. This is specific to the Shepparton North Gateway and the Kyella Lakes Drive. Looking at them, to me it looks like universal planning principles that could potentially be applied to all our entrances and amalgamated together, but I can understand that each need unique aspects of this, such as limitations on signage on Benalla Road, having shop fronts placed further back from the road, beautify the entrances, things that are really going to help another first impression coming into Shep.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Councillor Hazelman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think this is a pretty good example of how the planning scheme works in practice. That there was an identified need to look at the design frameworks in North and South. An appropriate consultant was engaged. A plan was developed, and that plan was adopted in draft format by the council and released for public comment. And a number of people took that opportunity to comment. All landowners, occupiers in the affected areas were notified, so they were consulted. And now we've got, going past that, the officer's intention now is to prepare and exhibit a planning scheme amendment, which which we've probably seen with other items on the agenda tonight. And that then provides another opportunity, another public process where people have the opportunity to object, and potentially they might end up at a planning panel, and then there's ultimately another report to council. So I think it demonstrates that the planning process can be an iterative process that keeps going backwards and forwards over the same type of area until it progresses to a final result.
Thank you, councillor. Any other councillor wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion? Back to you, councillor Summer. No? Thank you. That being the case, all in favour? Against? Motion carried. Item 9.9, councillors, on page 115, there's a recommendation in respect to the Calder Woodburn Memorial Avenue Advisory Committee, terms of reference. I'll just read out what the recommendation is, because number one is authorise the formation of the Calder Woodburn Memorial Avenue Advisory Committee in accordance with the proposed terms of reference. Adopt the terms of reference for the Calder Woodburn Memorial Avenue Advisory Committee. I keep saying drive, but sorry, Avenue Committee. Nominate one councillor to serve on the Calder Woodburn Memorial Avenue Advisory Committee, and item 4, authorise the placing of an advertisement in newspapers circulating in Greater Shepparton announcing calls for the public nomination for up to 3 community representatives for a 2-year tenure. Each nomination will be assessed against the nominee's ability to fulfil the functions of the Calder Woodburn Memorial Avenue Advisory Committee as outlined in terms of reference. Now, I just want to add, councillors, we have Councillor Shelley Sutton, who has agreed to, well, not agreed, but she's actually expressed interest in being on this committee as a councillor. So I'd suggest that whichever councillor moves this motion, they add Councillor Sutton's name to the motion. Councillor Giovanetti, are you moving the motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm more than happy to move this motion and add that Councillor Shelley Sutton be appointed to the Calder Woodburn Memorial Avenue Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Giovanetti.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. As we heard in our briefings, this is a very significant part of our history within the Goulburn Valley, and I think it's important that the committee work towards renewing the Memorial Avenue, because over a period of time trees haven't been maintained and have died, and it's imperative now that we get that avenue back to where it was, because it is of significant historical significance. To honour those men who in World War II sacrificed their lives for the country.
Thank you, Councillor Giovanetti. Councillor Patterson.
Yes, I'd like to support Councillor Giovanetti. A lot of history out there. It's worth reading. I know when the gentleman, Mr. Woodburn, planted the trees, he continued it on after he'd finished it. It was basically a memorial to his son originally, then he decided to plant a tree for every fallen soldier of the area, and he planted the fallen soldiers' trees closest to their home. So if you're at Benalla, you're closest planted to Benalla, etc. So there's a lot of history there. I hope and pray it doesn't get mixed up with too much red tape, trees not being removed that should be removed, because some of them have self-seeded and grown, need to have a really good look at how it used to be, and that's what we've got to aim at. And I'm very confident Councillor Sutton would be ideal, because any trees that have come out I've already seen with a hard hat and a cutting device, so we'll get rid of them pretty quick. So I think it's a really good thing Councillor's doing. It is, I can remember when I was a kid, I was only small, and I know Councillor Summer hadn't ever noticed it, and that's an age thing. It doesn't look like a memorial now, it needs to, even though there's only 8 years difference between us. So, yeah, highly recommend it, and it'll be a great thing that Council does, and I hope we get total support and a very much a unified committee that'll work towards our desired outcome.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors wishing to speak against the motion? No. For the motion? Councillor Summer.
just to say that Councillor Patterson was entirely correct. I did not even know that this was a Memorial Avenue. I just thought it was nice trees on the side of the road. So obviously we've dropped the ball in educating people about what the significance is. So there's 9.5 kilometres along the GV highway, and it's a memorial to someone's son that began in 1945, and that's amazing. It's like 2,457 trees, all just to remember the people who sacrificed their lives for this country. So that's a history that we shouldn't be forgetting, and we should be passing down. Every time we drive through there, we should say to the kids in the back seat, hey, did you know what this was for? Because I had no idea, and I'm really ashamed of that. But hopefully in the future, led by a great committee, we can rectify that.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Any other councillor wishing to add comment, either for or against? Councillor Sutton, I presume
like
you're
to say
speaking for the motion, yes?
Yes. I'm very happy to serve on this committee and be tasked with maintaining, enhancing and conserving the environmental values of the Memorial Avenue.
Good, thank you. Any other comments, councillors? Councillors?
A very small comment, Mr Mayor, was that when we did have our briefing, it was pointed out that it is in desperate need of being brought back. It's really run down, so we're very, very happy to be part of that progress and process of bringing it back to public attention.
Laurie, thank you. Councillors, for or against? Councillor Hazelman?
Voting.
Oh, no, I was asking for comments for or against, sorry, not for the vote. The vacuum cleaner's just, I'm going a bit deaf in this left ear. So, yeah, sorry. Councillors, that being said, Councillor Giovanetti, closing comments?
No, Mr Mayor, I think we've covered everything.
I think we have. I think it's a worthy committee, and congratulations to Councillor Sutton for putting her hand up, for being on that and representing council, and I'm sure she'll do a fantastic job in hopefully returning that Calder Woodburn Memorial Drive to its former glory and former significance, which will never be lost. That being the case, all in favour, councillors, of the motion? Against? Carried. Item, I presume this is a 10, 9.10 on page 121. Yes? Oh, I got that right. La Trobe University Memorandum of Understanding and Greater Shepparton City Council. We have a recommendation on page 121. Councillors, who'd like to move that motion or that recommendation as the motion? Councillor Summer, thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor Summer.
This motion will endorse a memorandum of understanding between this council and La Trobe University, and it will authorise the CEO to sign that memorandum of understanding on behalf of council. I'm really pleased about the MOU. I think it'll actually help position us as an education city. We have a number of tertiary institutions in this region, and only yesterday councillors took a tour of GoTAFE, and we were all really impressed by their learning facilities and their governance structure, being able to leverage off funding and really position themselves as strong and lasting in the region. So this MOU will facilitate mutually beneficial outcomes. It's about collaboration and cooperation, and I'm hoping that we'll get more MOUs for GoTAFE and also Melbourne Medical Centre to really position us as the destination for aspiring, intelligent, young and old.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Keefe. Okay. Councillors wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion? Councillor Summer, any closing comments? All in favour? Against? Motion carried. Item 124, item 9.11 on page 124. In respect to our new business grant guidelines, there is a recommendation. Councillors? Councillor Patterson, and wishing to move that motion. A second?
I would, yes, and I'd like to move an amendment with it, please.
Yes, and that would be? Or a change to the motion. Change the motion, Councillor Patterson.
Okay. The motion will now read that Council adopt the new business grant program guidelines, and number 2, that Council reassess the program in 12 months.
Okay. So the motion before us is that the Council adopt the new business grant program guidelines with a assessment at the
Reassessment in 12 months.
to be reassessed in 12 months. Are we clear on that, councillors? Do we have a seconder? Yep. Councillor Hazelman. Okay, Councillor Patterson.
I totally support council encouraging businesses to take up positions in Shepparton, as and Marutna and Tatura and Murchison. I have concerns as a previous business owner. I know how hard it is out there, and the other people that are in business and have been in business too will realise that it's very difficult when you're battling away and next thing someone gets a bit of a free handout and sets up a business beside you that basically catering for the same issues that you cater for. Now, since our briefing, I know that the assessment and the criteria has changed considerably. Suitability of the business, does it compete with existing offerings? And that is one of the criteria. I just have concerns how that will be overseen, and I think the amount of $30,000 isn't a lot of money, but it is a considerable amount. I just think we should look at it after 12 months to see how it is working. We can reassess it, we might improve it, we might reduce it. We might find it's the best thing that's ever happened to business in Shepparton. We don't know, but I'd like it reassessed after 12 months.
You, Councillor Hazelman.
I'd fully support those comments, particularly the highlighting the section about does it compete with an existing offering. I think that's the area that is of most concern. Having regard for, I think it's somewhere in the order of something like 80% of your growth and development will come from existing businesses investing in expansion and whatever. And so I think the notion of let's give it a go for 12 months is fine. Let's see what applications we get for it. Let's see what how the funds are actually allocated, and then do the review in 12 months' time to see whether it's working. The comment I made about growth and development coming from within, we could have a fairly modest business gaining access to these funds by coming to Shepparton, but a fairly substantial business investing significant amounts of money wouldn't benefit in any way from it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion? Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I do feel a little bit uncomfortable with this. I think it's, basically helping three businesses. I'm all for supporting business across the Greater Shepparton. However, I have concerns. Is it a local government duty to do that? Again, I think the two issues that have been raised with both Councillor Hazelman and Councillor Patterson is exactly how I'm feeling about it. We need to be very, very strict on the people coming through, making sure that the money is not wasted. I know it's not a lot of money, but money is money, and I think it's a risky type of adventure to take on, and I don't like the idea perhaps of doing it for someone and not for some other person. I would have liked that perhaps to be more at a state government offering. I think it's difficult to pick and choose, but let's wait and see what happens. I think, okay, let's give me the benefit of the doubt and see what happens over this next 12-month process.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion, Councillor Summer.
Well, in regards to the 12-month review, I would imagine that this would come back to us anyway so that we can endorse the people who have been successful, and there will also be an acquittal process that councillors will be provided on whether or not the grant was successful. It's a relatively small amount of money, as was said, up to $10,000 for successful applicants, and it's a budget allocation of only $30,000. In regards to this not being a local government initiative, I will urge councillors to remind themselves that we need to be looking at the triple bottom line in everything that we do, and that means we need to look at social elements, we need to look at the financial elements, and we need to look at the environmental elements. So if we have a carrot out there for people who might not quite be at the level where they want to invest in a business, but they really want to find out more, they can try and apply for these grants and be assisted along the way. And even if they're not successful, they can be linked into our business info centre who can assist them with a business plan. So people will feel more aspirational in this city. There's the financial element, which means more shops around the town, means more employment, which means more money in our economy, and that all gets spread. $1 spent locally goes around the economy 7 times. There's also the environmental component, and that when we walk around down the street and we see the vacant shops, it's just not a vibrant and active amenity when we walk down the street and we see that. So this has the potential to actually get people in those shops and improve the environment. It is a small step, but it is a start. I don't believe we should be focused on whether they compete with existing businesses. I think that word compete is a little bit toxic, and we should be saying complement. Because if you get a bunch of the similar businesses in one street, it's going to become a destination, like we've seen with Ishka and Culture Tree being very close together. You get a similar type of shoppers going there, and they know that they can have variety and choice. I would like to review this in 12 months, sure, I'm happy to do that, and I'm hoping we can expand into helping small businesses take that next step in growing, because I think that's really important. Entrepreneurship is important, but small business is 30% of our economy. So, yep, I'm happy to do this. It's a small step, but it has my support.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor wishing to add comment? Against? Or for? For comment. Thank you.
I'm just wanting to point out that it's dollar for dollar, so it's not like they've got to put in money too. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other councillor wishing to comment? Councillor Osvari.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's a great idea, not owning a business, but I can see that you've got to put your money where your mouth is, and as Councillor Sutton correctly pointed out, dollar for dollar. I'm conscious of the fact that some of us are a bit squeamish in relation to issues in relation to matters of governance, but I'm fairly confident that if it's managed correctly and effectively, it will only just bring people to the community and shows that this council is fair income in relation to.
Thank you, Councillor Osvari. Any other councillor wishing to add comment? Against the motion or for the motion? That being said, Councillor Patterson.
I'd just like to make one comment on what Councillor Summers said. Competition is good, but it has to be even footing. The concept of two fish and chip shops sitting beside one another, and council's paid 10 grand for their deep fryer for one of them, and the other guy's paid 10 grand in rates, and the new guy comes to the other guy and says, thanks very much for your 10 grand for your new deep fryer. You know, you've got to have in context the fact that these people are paying for other people's start in business. And in business, you've got to be able to stand up on your own 2 feet and fight, but sometimes it can be disheartening for that current business. So I want to have a look at it in 12 months like most other councils want to do.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. That being said, all in favour of the motion? Against? Motion carried. We have item 9.12. Before we get to that, Councillor Giovanetti, did you have an item?
I do, but I thought it actually related to item 9.13, was what I was told, but I'm quite happy to table it now if...
No, you can table it any time. Now that I've wasted our time in asking you, I think you should table it now if you choose to.
I'd like to table
with the lead of council.
this petition as an attachment to the report.
Okay.
The petition from obviously Fairley's IGA that has a total of 572 names on the petition.
Point of clarification, Mr Mayor, the origin of the petition?
Councillor
I think it was forwarded to council.
What I'm getting at, is it an IGA-generated petition?
Oh, yes.
IGA-generated, yes.
Indeed. Yep. So with the leave of council, or with the agreement, we're happy to table that, allow that to be tabled. Thank you, Councillor Giovanetti. It's been duly noted. Now, on to item 9.12, the proposed amendment C192 to the Greater Shepparton Planning Scheme implementation of the Commercial Activity Centre strategy, consideration of submissions. There is a motion on page 130. Do I have a councillor wishing to move that as a motion? Councillor Summer, did you have your hand up? I thought you...
Yeah,
I
right.
saw movement at the station there, yes? Do you have a seconder, please? Councillor Orozvari. Councillor Summer?
What to say? This is about, again, going to a planning panel. This isn't about making any decisions, and it's just noting our position when it gets to the panel and giving officers discretion in achieving our adopted outcome. Now, we have to have an outcome. We need to have a position going to a panel. And we began with the position that the planning scheme amendment should go through, and that will give it more weight when it comes to things like double supermarkets and no cinemas outside of the mall. Now, I don't necessarily agree with those. I do plan to attend this panel meeting personally so that I can hear for myself some of the objections and our response to those objections. I need to be clear in myself when I make a decision based on I'm just confident that it should go to a panel so that it will help me make my mind up about a few things.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Councillor Orizmari.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think what Councillor Summer was looking for, to differentiate between the spin and the facts in relation to the certain elements within the community which are painting an extremely negative and dire and potentially cataclysmic event in relation to this potential amendment. So I think it's all there in black and white, and I dare say this will come up as a controversial topic at a later time.
Thank you, councillors. Anyone wishing to speak against the motion? Councillor Sutton.
C192 and C193, and I'm speaking against this amendment as I don't think that this amendment is warranted at this time. I note that the proposal is to develop more retail floor space in the north of Shepparton, which includes town squares, cafes, retail outlets, including a supermarket, medical centre and more. The area already has a large IGA supermarket with permits to increase its floor space to include a larger supermarket and retail space. I don't believe that this would be a good planning outcome with supermarkets and retail space in such close proximity to each other. It has been described to me with more than 10,000 residents in the north, another supermarket is required. Shepparton has 6 supermarkets and many neighbourhood smaller supermarkets, all with liquor licences, which equates to approximately 60,000 people. Shepparton's population is approximately 36,000 in Shepparton, I believe, and we already have an oversupply. A supermarket is only about 5 minutes drive away from any area in Shepparton. I refer to the Commercial Activities Centre strategy, which confirms the primacy of the Shepparton CBD. By continually allowing shopping centres being constructed on the fringes of our city, it restricts the ability of the CBD becoming the primary precinct, as people no longer have to come to the area to do their shopping or have their coffee. Shepparton has an oversupply of retail commercial floor space, and until that is filled, I think that we are negating our responsibility to the city if we continually allow more and more building on the peripheral and not concentrating on filling buildings that are empty in the central areas.
Thank you. Councillor Councillor, who seconded that motion? You did, Councillor Orizmari.
I've already spoken.
Spoken, thank you. Any councillor wishing to speak for the motion? Against the motion? You, Councillor Summer. No further comment? All in favour of the motion? Against? Motion carried. Item 9.13, councillors. On page 142, the combined amendment C193 and planning permit application 2016-269 for the development of a second supermarket in Shepparton North. There is a motion on page 143, or recommendation, sorry. Who'd like to move that as a Councillor Giovanetti? And a seconder, please. Councillor Orizmari. Councillor Giovanetti.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Obviously submissions the similarity of the submissions C192 and 193 are going to be dealt with at the same planning hearing later this month. And the motion is, or the recommendation is that we're moving is that with regard to submissions received for Amendment C193 to the Greater Shepparton Planning Scheme and Planning Permit Application 2016-269, Council note Council Officer's position outlined in this report for referral and presentation to an independent planning panel, and note that Council Officers may exercise discretion to best achieve the general position adopted by Council. This is a procedural motion more than anything else, so the matter, so Council Officers have some direction when they go to the planning hearing.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Orizvari?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Any councillor wishing to speak against the motion? Well, you've spoken against another motion, councillor, but...
Same.
Councillors for? Councillor Summer?
I just want to make it clear that I'm for this because I want to really analyse the arguments from both sides. If councillors were to refuse the application to this at some point, I know that there's been a lot of division in the community and a lot of many signatures on the petition. If we were to refuse this application, we'd have to have pretty strong grounds in which to do so. I do not want this to get to VCAT and our arguments are populous, our arguments are weak, and it's overturned at VCAT and it costs ratepayers $100,000 and the supermarket's built anyway. We really need to get all the information and be really objective and do what's best for our municipality and ratepayers.
Thank you, councillor. Councillors speak against? For? Councillor Giovanetti, would you like any closing comments?
No, Mr Mayor, it's all been said.
Thank you. All in favour? Against? Motion carried. What page am I at? See? No. Can't be. Sorry, councillors, it's on page 165 on mine. Councillors, item 9.14, the River Connect Strategic Plan for 2017 to 2022 on page, well, I'll probably be giving you the wrong pages, I've got the electronic version in front of me here. On page 166, I think, there's a recommendation that I'm looking for a councillor to move as a motion. Councillor, 160, 160 on the hard copy, yes. Councillor Patterson, you'd like to move that motion. A seconder, please. Councillor Summer. Councillor Patterson.
Yes, I'm very proud of this document. There's a lot of people who have put an awful lot of work into it. It's been very impressive. They've been working on it for several months. This is basically River Connect's roadmap for the next 4 years. It identifies the things we want to work towards. We've identified our top priorities as build more resilient and accessible river environments, which will include boat ramps and access pontoons. Inspire the education sector. That's very big for everyone that's involved in River Connect. We have a great asset running right at the back of us as we sit here, and so many people don't know what's down there. They don't know the value that we have, what that river is worth to us. So it's so unutilised still. And we'll get to the stage one day when it will be respected the way it should be. I still believe that you could get rid of all blood pressure medication in Shepparton if you went for a paddle down the Goulburn every morning. You come out just a new person, a new look in the world. We need to engage the community, which is what we concentrate on.
It's not working, Paddy.
Sorry?
It's not working.
Oh, I'm down to half a dose. Engaging the community is a very big one. That's a part of the education process and letting people see what is down there. If you want to protect something, you've got to educate people and show them what it is, and this is what it's about. And prove the health and well-being of the river. There's another very important thing we're working on. Major projects, our consultation come to the top 6 projects, and the main one is construction of the shared path network, we start this year, there is money in this year's budget for the planning of the Gemmell Swamp Kidstown Path, which has just got, it's so rich in history you will not believe it when it's completed. That's the first one, and there's a master plan of all of them. I think there's 5 to be done in the next 5 years. We're looking forward to that. Rehabilitation, revegetation of the river areas. A lot of them have been degraded. They need some tender loving care. Upgrading access is a very big one that it is reasonably difficult to get down there and have a look sometimes. Platypus viewing platforms and that sort of thing is what we're looking at. People don't realise there's colonies of platypus 200 metres away from us here. It's underexplored, underutilised. We really want to work on illegal dumping, and that is a big thing that everyone's conscious of. We want to basically try and find out where that rubbish is coming from. You get a flood, you look at the bridge, it's just covered with litter. We need to identify it so we can then target different aspects of where that rubbish is coming from. And if we can do that, we have a real good chance of cutting it down. And of course the East Bank Lake, which is...
For a moment, could you just make a note that Councillor Giovanetti has left the room? Carry on.
I'm not going to talk until he gets
back.
Well,
actually, good timing. It's time now. Would you like further? Would you like some more time?
No, she's fine, thank you.
Sure?
She's heard it all before. East Bank Lake...
no, would you like extra time? Would you like extra time to speak? Your time is up, Councillor.
Only one to go.
So, councillors, are we happy to let council? Yes, continue on.
We've now got to start from the top again. East Bank Lake, Councillor, former Mayor Dobson's pet project. It's under the auspices of River Connect now, and we're looking forward to working on that. And we certainly want to encourage the Aboriginal culture events and develop them over a period of time. So I'd highly recommend it. For those that don't know, River Connect is funded by Council and the CMA jointly, and we have about 12 membership partners involved. So it's a really good program. Thank you. Highly recommend it.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Summer?
Start by saying...
I've gone to time before.
I know. I was just going to say I've never heard Councillor Patterson speak for so long on one issue, and it is. I can confirm that his passion for this is 100% genuine. He has been the chair of the River Connect Committee for a few years now, and he's the current chair. And I remember once we ended up in a canoe, I think, together, going down that river, and the diversity astounded me. This is something new for me again. Council gives you these opportunities, but the people in the public really have to make the effort to do it themselves. And he's pointing out...
Excuse me, Councillor Summer, can I just note the reintroduction of Councillor Giovanetti to the room? Thank you. Carry on, please.
Some of the wildlife, the birds down there apparently migrate from other countries. There's lizards on... River Connect do tours for... they have an emphasis on child education. You can take them along to see sugar gliders, turtles, all sorts of wildlife that we really don't realise. We've turned our back to the river, and we really need to start realising what is on our doorstep. Because the only people who go down there generally are people who are already converted or people who want to dump rubbish. And that's just terrible. It's really making a big mess of our waterways. It's killing animals. And nobody likes to see that. It's lazy. If you have a trailer big enough and you have enough petrol to get to the river to dump your things, you can take them to the transfer station, and some of that's recyclable and some of that's free. Dumping, there is no excuse, and we're going to be really cracking down on that through a campaign on River Connects.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Any councillor wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion?
Just very quickly, Mr Mayor.
Councillor,
sorry.
Okay, no, don't be sorry at all.
I just wanted to add to it that I had met up with some of the Aboriginal community in recent times, and the discussion on the opportunity for tourism down there. Our well-known local Aboriginal representative, one of them, Uncle, I can't think of his surname, but spend some time chatting about the opportunity, and the people they are taking down there and showing our river. I think there's a really great opportunity to expand on that, and obviously this is part of that, so supporting that motion.
Absolutely. Any other councillors wish to speak for or against the motion? That being said, Councillor Patterson, would you like to extend on your time?
Yes, unfortunately, Councillor Giovanetti lost... Didn't hear it?
I'd like to...
No, I'm catching that, Councillor.
You can catch it up. Thank you, Councillor Patterson. That being the case, all in favour of the motion, councillors? Against? Motion carried. Now, item 10, tabled motions. We have none. Reports from council delegates to other bodies, nil received. Reports from special committees and advisory committees, nil received. Notice of motion, amendment or rescissions, none. Documents for signing and sealing, none. Item 15.1, councillors' community interaction and briefing program. We have the motion or the recommendation, on page 170. Who'd like to move that recommendation as a motion, please? Councillor Giovanetti. Seconder, please. Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor Giovanetti.
No, Mr Mayor, it's straightforward.
No,
Okay.
Mr Mayor.
Anyone wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion? Back to you, Councillor Giovanetti.
Nothing further, Mr Mayor.
Nothing further. All in favour of the motion? Against? Motion carried. Item 16.1, councillors. We have a recommendation. This is assemblies of councillors. I've just got to find the page, sorry. What's that? 186. On page 16.1, 186, councillors. There's a recommendation that the council note the record of assemblies of councillors. Who'd like to move that as a motion? Councillor Sutton. Do I have a seconder, please? It's Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor Sutton? No comment. Councillor O'Keefe. Anyone wishing to speak against this motion? For the motion? Councillor Sutton, any closing comments or any extensions to what you said? Nothing? Yeah, okay. All in favour, please? Against? Motion carried. Item 17, any urgent and other business not included on the agenda, councillors? None, thank you. Public question time. We don't have any public question.
Yes, we do.
We
Thank
do,
you, Mr.
okay,
Mayor.
thank you. Well, that's not on the agenda, Mr Harriet.
Two.
It's not there.
Question going.
Thank you, Mr Harriet. Could you please read out the public
So,
questions?
we have two questions from Mr Gray, and Mr Gray's in the audience tonight, so welcome, John. Question 1. Greater Shepparton City Council's website no longer provides ready electronic public access to several years' former council meetings minutes, now offering merely the statutory online retrieval for the past 12 months. The restriction does not appear to have formal council approval, but a council spokesperson has alluded to reasons of privacy. Can that impression be explained more precisely, particularly as of a random search of 6 municipal websites, Wellington, Warrnambool, Moira, Strathbogie, Benalla and Campaspe, shows only our northern neighbour interpreting Regulation 12C as the minimum being also the maximum. The other 5 ranging currently back to July 2012, Campaspe, and Campaspe even offering a topic search over those 5 years. The response is, in accordance with Section 12C of the Local Government Act General Regulations 2005, Council is required to make council meeting minutes available to the public for a period of 12 months. Council's website content is regularly reviewed and has recently been updated in accordance with the above provision. By providing council meeting agenda and minutes of the previous 12 months, Council is ensuring that its compliance with the Local Government General Regulations 2015, Section 12, compliance with that regulation. Minutes, agenda and attachments prior to 12 months, excluding confidential documents, can still be requested by members of the public through the Freedom of Information application process. Providing access to these documents outside of Council's statutory requirement beyond the 12-month period can in fact impose privacy implications under the Privacy and Data Protection Act 2014 on the Council by continuing the provisions of personal information outside the statutory timeframe of the Local Government General Regulations 2005. A complaint has been made in this regard to this particular matter in the past. Question 2. More than a dozen years ago, Council adopted a mosaic of gardens concept of taking high-quality resort public gardens to the larger and medium-sized towns in Greater Shepparton, such as Maribna, Tatura, Merrigum, Dookie, Congupna, etc. If I recall correctly, Ferrari Park in Maribna and McTeer Park in Tatura were identified as starting points. As very minor improvements have been incremented and there has been no formal rescission of that strategy, can the current status of progress be reported on? And the response to that is the mosaic gardens concept was developed many years ago to provide high quality open spaces to the community. Successful development of many areas has occurred, including Monash Gardens out here. Development of public open space to the community is initiated through a master planning process with input from a range of stakeholders and the community, and we heard a bit about that tonight with community plans. Over time, master plans are reviewed to incorporate changes and assess their status, with the revised version superseding previous documents. Actions from these master plans are subject to funding being available either through Council's capital program or other funding sources, as we saw in the budget and Council plan tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harriott. Item 19, confidential management reports. None. 19.1, Council's designation of confidentiality of information. Some attachment says the recommendation on page, yes, on the last page. Do I have a 97, is it? Sorry? 187. I have got no number here, sorry. So, please, the councillor to move the recommendation. Councillor Summer, do you know what recommendation it is? There's a motion. 19.1. Yeah, 19.1. Okay.
As a motion.
Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson, thank you.
Look up, I wouldn't have to.
Okay. Councillor Summer, would you like to
So
speak?
we are designating items as confidential under Section 77 of the Local Government Act, which is very specific, and the reason for it is because these documents could be commercial in confidence. So those two documents are the provision of drainage maintenance services and provision of banking and bill payment services.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson?
No, it's Councillor Summers.
Any other councillor wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion? Councillor Summer, would you like any closing comments so quickly after your opening comments? None? Thank you. All in favour, councillors? Against? Motion carried. Item 19.2, councillors. We have a recommendation on the same page. Do I have a councillor wishing to move that? We close the meeting for... Yes, Councillor Giovanetti. And a seconder, please. Sorry? 19. Yes, that's what we're doing.